All right, we are live. Welcome to live stream number 3, guys. Hope you guys enjoy the live stream today. Today, I'm gonna kind of cover 2 things. I put together 25 tricks inside Premiere Pro that I'm gonna cover. Also, kind of featuring the 2022 and 2023 new features. So there's a few new features that rolled out with the 2023 release of Premiere Pro. I will cover those earlier in the video. A lot of them are in the Essential Graphics panel. But essentially, I'm going to go through that. I'm going to also highlight a lot of the 2022 features as tricks as well, because there was a lot of new features that rolled out within the last few years inside Premiere Pro. So without further ado, let's dive into number 1. And when I first thought about doing this live stream, I thought about doing 100 tricks, but we'll be here till midnight tonight doing 100. So I have no idea how long this stream will be, but you guys will get 25 tricks inside Premiere Pro today that I put together. And also, if you are watching the replay, there will be captions once I have time to go back in and kind of like, put on where each tip goes. So, if you know one tip and you're watching this later, feel free to skip forward and see something that you might want to learn more about. All right, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. All right, 25 editing tricks. So one of the first newer things inside the 2023 release of Premiere Pro is that they kind of revamped the Essential Graphics panel quite a bit. If you work with graphics a lot inside Premiere Pro, you'll notice that the UI looks a little different. They added a few things, and I'm going to cover just a few of those things here. So one of the things you'll notice is I will go in my sequence here. I just have this project open as an old project of mine with sound panels as showing how to install sound panels in my studio. But this is a good example of just some B-roll, so just a simple project open that we can just kind of mess around with. So I have my type tool, and if you are following along, you can switch to the Captions and Graphics workspace, and you should see the Essential Graphics panel open. I'm just going to grab my type tool and click out in the program monitor. I'm going to type in sound panels. I'm going to grab my selection tool. Now we got this text. So one of the things you'll notice down under appearance, it kind of revamped it quite a bit. You'll notice that they moved the eyedropper from the right side to the left side, and that there's these plus buttons also under shadow and stroke. Now this is pretty cool, and what this really means is that you can add several strokes or shadows to your text layer. But how do we actually use this to our advantage, when we're video editing? One of the things that adding a lot of, drop shadows or strokes, you can really create a lot of depth inside your text inside Premiere Pro. So let's make this pretty, this text layer. Let's click on the underneath fill. I'll click on the white. One of the newer features, it's not a 2023 feature, but it's a 2022 kind of like mid-season release, is you now have two gradient options you can actually change the fill to. So, we can choose a linear gradient. Then you got these two markers here, so we can just click on one. Maybe we do the classic like Instagram type of colors here. Kind of like a summerish type of vibe, pink and orange. But, you can click OK. And then you have stroke. So say if you check on the stroke, by default, it's white. Then you'll notice that there's a drop-down menu to the right side. You can choose outer, inner, or center. Outer is on the outside of the text. Inner is kind of strokes it inside of the text bounds. And then center kind of goes in the middle. It's very similar if you work with Photoshop text layers inside like the blending options. It's very similar to that. So that's always, different options you can choose. But check this out. You can hit the plus button, and you can add a different stroke, and you can change it from outer to inner. So for example, maybe if we wanted to add a little bit more depth, we can choose inner and then change the color to maybe black or something. Click OK, maybe drop down the stroke width to maybe 4. And check this out, we got like a nice, pretty nice looking text with a lot of depth. You have the outside stroke that's white, the inside stroke that's black, and then you have that a linear gradient applied. So, these features weren't around just actually over a year ago. So it's pretty cool to have a few more options when you're working with this inside Premiere Pro. So that was tip number 1. Tip number 2, it's not a new feature, but this is just something that I discovered that is a cool way to actually add some glow to your text. So say if we wanted to actually add a glow, well, you could use the drop shadow feature. If we click on here, you can actually go to shadow, check it, make it maybe white, expand it. But one other thing that you could also do is you could also duplicate your text layer in the timeline and actually add a Gaussian blur to it. And this one thing I didn't think about is actually blurring your text to actually make it kind of look like a glow, which is a pretty cool idea. So say if we duplicate this, I'm going to hit Option, click and drag up in your timeline to duplicate the layer. Then on this bottom layer, what I'm going to do is actually uncheck stroke and change the linear gradient back to solid and make it white. Click OK. And then find your effects panel and type in blur. I never know how to spell Gaussian. I'm a very bad speller, guys, so I type in blur and then it comes up. Then you can double click it to actually add it to the clip in the timeline. And then check this out. If you blur it, it kind of looks like you're actually adding a glow effect, which is pretty cool. So that's tip number 2, to add a blur as almost like a glow. All right, so that's 2 text tips. Staying with text for tip number 3. Another new feature in 2023 is that they kind of added more transform tools if you're working with a lot of different text and graphics within the same kind of like element. So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to delete that, grab my type tool, and let's say we type once, right? And maybe we add 3 different layers or so. Let's type in cool. Now say if you exit, you just click out and you click back on, grab your selection tool, you have this, right? You got cool, but you can also add another text layer within that. It doesn't all have to be in the same, line or item or layer, I guess. So if you click again, you'll notice that there's a second type tool or a second like type layer added in the top right of the Essential Graphics panel. Right up here, you'll notice that there's a new type layer, but it's only one clip in the timeline. So it's like you can add several type layers to one clip. So that way your timeline doesn't get too cluttered per se. So I'm going to do cool sound, then maybe click off. We can realign this here. And then we'll just do one more, panels. So we have all 3 of these text layers, and they're kind of all over the place, right? Say if we wanted to actually control where these are. Well, there's a few more new options here. You can actually click and select all of them. And you'll notice that there's a new align and transform options available. So, obviously when you're doing this on your own, explore with them, but you can align these, center horizontally, you can align to the edges, and you can actually change align to selection, align to video frame, align to video frame as group, which is very helpful. So, it's actually center aligning it to the group. So it's basing, the bounds of the outsides, and it's actually aligning it center to everything here. See that sound, that middle layer, when I did that, kind of scooted up to, this is pretty cool if you work with text a lot. But yeah, there's different options in here, and it's pretty cool, especially with groups. Before, it was very hard to align several different layers, or even if you're working with shapes and stuff. So to have these new align and transform features is really cool, a new cool feature inside Premiere Pro. All right, one other, this isn't a new feature, but it's a cool trick to do when you're working with text inside Premiere Pro. Say I'm going to actually move this clip over sound panels. Let's move this over here. And this is tip number 4. Say if you actually wanted to put the video clip inside this text layer. What you could do is actually add an effect called track matte key. So inside the effects panel, you can search for track matte key. And where you actually want to apply this is actually to the video clip. Just click and drag this to your video clip. And then in effects controls, scroll down and you can choose matte and then actually choose the video layer that the matte is referencing. So in this case, we want it to read video 2. And then it's using the alpha matte. In this case, alpha matte works good. Luma will also work because the text is white. But now you can see that the video is actually inside the text layer. So that's a cool way to do that. To put text inside a video layer, if you ever wanted to do that. All right, so that is kind of the new text features I wanted to cover. And next we're going to actually go into some coloring. Color grading. Some color grading tips. Take a quick break. One thing I notice about doing these live streams is I need to take a break once in a while because, from talking just continuously. Definitely need a bottle of water when doing these. All right, let's get back into Premiere Pro. All right, so some of the new features inside the color panel that came out, you can actually auto adjust color correct, essentially. So say if you wanted to color correct clips, just change your workspaces to the color feature. And now say if we wanted to actually just color grade this clip, what you can do now, there's a new button under basic color correction called auto, and this will automatically use AI to determine the levels. Gave it a lot of nice contrast to it, brought up the highlights quite a bit. Otherwise you'd have to actually manually adjust these. Now one cool thing about this is that it will do what it thinks is good, but you can always go back in here and say if you didn't want the highlights being that bright, you can bring them down, you can bring up the shadows a little bit. Maybe you can actually adjust these, if it didn't get close. But, if you're brand new to color correction, having that auto button is really nice to just do it. And then you can actually build your color correction from there, after hitting that button. If you need a baseline of kind of like where you want to start when it comes to color. But that's a new feature that rolled out within the last year in 2022. All right, I'm going to reset that. So one other feature that's really nice in color is you can actually color match clips inside Premiere Pro. So say we have this clip here, and maybe we want this clip to match that clip. What we can do is hover over this clip, click on it, and then go to Color Wheels and Match. Then you can click this button called Comparison View. And then you can choose the clip that you want to apply, have the reference clip of, so we want this clip, the clip that I'm over here, to match the color of the clip to the left. What you can do is click Apply Match, and you can see it kind of matched the colors quite a bit and made the wood kind of look the same, the sound panels look the same. So it did a really nice job by applying the match of the colors. So if you're working with trying to make your clips look the same throughout your whole sequence, that feature is a nice feature to do that. And under Comparison View, you have a few different options here. If you actually wanted to split it and actually see how it looks across different angles here, you can do that as well. But yeah, that Apply Match is a new AI feature that came on the last few years or so. All right, so those are the new color effects. Let's dive into some audio stuff. This isn't a new feature, but it's something that I use all the time, especially working with audio. I'll go back into my editing workspace and go down in my sequences, go to podcasts. I have a podcast episode from one of my podcasts. And if you are curious, I think it's down in the video description. There's a link to my podcast if you want to listen to it. It's called the Post Show Podcast, where I interview people in post-production, as well as second seasons about kind of building a YouTube channel and my personal brand. But say if you wanted to zoom in more than where you can go from here, you can only zoom in so far with frames. You can actually change it from frames to audio samples. And to do that, you can click on the hamburger menu inside the timeline window and click on Show Audio Time Units. And now what you can do, you can zoom in all the way. If you're actually aligning audio clips, or working on audio only, you can switch to that and zoom in. You can align it. This is especially helpful if you're trying to align music tracks a lot inside Premiere Pro. Sometimes one frame off is it doesn't end up sounding good. So this is a way if you really need to adjust some audio settings to really go in and deep dive, have the ability to zoom in closer to your audio files. And you'll notice that your timecode indicator here, it's actually showing it in samples. After the 1122 here, it's samples instead of frames. So obviously you have a lot more room to zoom in. But yeah, that's located inside the hamburger menu. So that's a nice trick to use if you are working with audio a lot inside Premiere Pro. All right, let's talk about a new feature that came out within the last year or so. It's called Remix. Remix is a really cool tool, and it saves a lot of time, especially if you are new to Premiere Pro and maybe you don't have a strong music background, you don't want to make a lot of edits to songs. You can use a remix tool to actually make, the music clip longer or shorter to a specific time. So in this example here, I have a podcast episode. Maybe I want to add a background music to this. And, this podcast episode is 26 minutes long. So, I'd have to copy and paste, several times and maybe try to blend the audio together. And it would take a lot of time, right? Well, with the new feature of Remix that came out last year in 2022, you can add in just an audio clip and expand it, and it automatically just makes it the length of whatever you want it to be. It'll loop it automatically, and it's one of probably the best features about Remix. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So inside audio, I'm going to go into my music bin. Say maybe we want this audio track here. I'm just going to click and drag it to the sequence. I'm going to go to the beginning. So we have it here, and where the remix tool is, it's actually located under your rate stretch tool. So you can hit R if you're unfamiliar where it is, and it's under this menu. If you click and hold down, you'll see that there's a remix tool at the very bottom. And once you click it, you'll notice, you have a little sound icon. Sorry, I don't know what it's called. I'm not a music major, but it turns into that kind of looking icon with the music note there. And what you can do basically is drag the edge of the track, and this will expand it. So you can see you can expand it all the way out here to 26, 27 minutes. I recommend going a little further. If you go directly to the end, the song will finish before that point. So kind of give yourself a little bit of a tail here. So go just up beyond the podcast episode, let go. And you'll notice it'll analyze it, and also you'll notice that the essential sound panel opens as well. And that's really where you can fine tune, your selections of the remix tool. All right, so what happened here? I'll show you. I'll grab my selection tool. So what you'll notice right away, if we zoom in on our timeline, you'll notice these squigglies. And those squigglies is kind of where Premiere Pro and Adobe Sensei kind of mashes the song together. And the different options you have inside the Essential Sound panel, if you unroll Customize, what you can do if you want the song to play out more, you can add fewer segments, essentially the squigglies, by just clicking and dragging this slider to the left. I do this most of the time. It sounds more natural if there's less breaks in the song like that. So now you'll notice that there's less squigglies. And there's, a longer looping segment, right? So, but yeah, I mean, we just looped an entire song within a matter of seconds. Otherwise I'd still be here just hitting Command C, Command V, to trying to loop it. So that's how Remix works. It's really nice to actually just loop a song and make it really long. It can also work in the opposite way. Not as well, but it's probably going to get better. If you need a song and you need it to be 30 seconds, you can let Premiere Pro try to squish it down to 30 seconds. But I'm sure, this feature is going to get a lot better down the line as Adobe improves their products. But this is a pretty cool feature that came out, especially for, looping audio tracks. So that is the Remix tool, and that was number 7 in our list here. Moving right along. I'm sorry, that was number 8. I got a list of things here. All right, so staying on audio. When you work with audio a lot, especially maybe a podcast or so, I'm gonna solo the dialogue here. And when we play this back, hold on, guys. One of the features I like to do to bring up the audio levels inside Premiere Pro, if you're working with audio, the feature I was going to explain is called compression. So you know how if you have a long clip of audio and maybe it's a little low, if you want to bring that up quite a bit, a cool feature, a cool effect to use is called dynamics. So if you go to Effects panel, you can search for it by just typing in dynamics. Click and drag this. It's under amplitude and compression. Click and drag this out to your audio clip. And then under effects controls, where you can go is click on edit and then click on the compressor button. And this will help compress your audio. So if you are dealing with low audio levels, this is a good way to compress, bring up the lows, bring down the highs, and kind of bring it together. And the things to change here is the ratio. So you can change the ratio to maybe 2, and maybe the makeup between like 6 or 9-ish. This really depends on your own audio clip. So you'll have to adjust these depending on, every person's audio is a little different. But this really helps bring up, voice or dialogue inside a podcast. You can change the ratio to maybe 3 and the makeup to 9 or 10 or so around there, and that helps bring up the audio. And then also, if your audio is clipping, there is a limiter built into this effect. So if you check this box, and then you can change your threshold to -6 or wherever you'd like that to be. So that is the dynamics effect. Unfortunately, I was trying to figure out how to play it back through OBS, but I don't think it's going to work. So to be continued on actually playing back audio. All right, so the next effect that I'm going to go over, so say if you wanted, this background track is a little loud, an easy way to bring up your audio controls is actually a keyboard shortcut called G. So you can click G on your keyboard and that brings up audio gain. So that's a good way to, quickly bring up your audio settings, and then you can actually click, normalize all peaks, and then change it to, background levels, maybe -24. Then click OK, and then that'll bring everything down. So that's another audio trick with that. So those are the audio things that I wanted to go over today. Let's go back into our sound panel, talk about some more tricks. Close out of the sound panel. And we notice that the comparison view is still open. There is a little button here in the program monitor if you want to close it or reopen it. If you don't see that, it's located under the plus button as well. All right, so let's go up. Say we have this clip right here, right? Maybe I want to speed this up quite a bit. Well, an easy way to do that in a keyboard shortcut to bring up, speed and duration is Command or Control R if you're on a PC. And that'll bring up clip speed and duration, and then you can actually type in, maybe 1000%. And then under here, there's ripple edit. So when you click that, everything will shift over with it. So click that, and now it's very fast when we play this back here. Me stacking the sound panels. So that's an easy way to speed up audio clip or video clips. Now say if you wanted to slow down video, I'm gonna try to find a clip maybe that we want to slow down. Maybe I want to slow this part down right here. What you can do is click on the clip, click Command R, but the weird thing is I didn't shoot in like a high frame rate. So, when we slow this down, it's going to look a little choppy. So if you're working with, maybe footage that doesn't have a high frame rate, but you want to slow it down anyway, there's a way to cheat it. So say if we wanted to slow it down to maybe 65% or so, what you can actually do is click on time interpolation down here and change it to optical flow. And when you do that and click OK, you'll notice that it slows down, but it looks pretty smooth here between the pixels. So it really depends on your, setting, but that looks pretty good. It's slowed down. but it doesn't look choppy how, it's just like, choppy across the screen here. So that looks pretty good. And you'll notice that the line above it turned red, and to actually play it back in real time, you might want to hit return or enter if you're on a PC, and this will actually render it out. So that is a way to cheat, slow motion video. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat as we wait to render it out. Life of a video editor. The next part is important because I need it to render out to go into my next note here. But yeah, just a preview of what's ahead here. After this, I'm going to go into some Premiere Pro preference settings that you can change that will really help you speed up your workflow inside Premiere Pro. After that, I'm going to show you guys some new features. One is called Auto Reframe, which is a pretty cool feature. It automatically reframes your sequence. Say if you need videos to be actually for social media, to reframe like a horizontal video to be vertical. There's a new feature in Premiere Pro to do that, as well as auto scene detection, which is actually something I never talked about before, but it's really helpful in certain situations to use. I'm going to cover that as well. And then there's the new Simplify Sequence feature that helps you simplify your sequence, so I'll be covering that as well. I think it's pretty much done here. Alright, so when this finishes, you'll notice that it plays back at the beginning, and that's what I was waiting for, is when you render something like that, it automatically plays it back. And maybe you didn't want it to do that. Now we're all the way back at the beginning of the sequence. Now I'd have to go back over here, click on it, zoom back in, and say if we didn't want that to happen. Tip number 13 is if you go up to Premiere Pro Preferences Timeline, there's actually a button where you can actually turn that off. There's a button called Play After Render Previews, and that's what that is. When you uncheck that and click OK and you render something, it won't play back at the beginning. So that's a helpful way to get around that. Alright, so a few other Premiere Pro preference settings. If we go back into Timeline, you'll notice that there is the default transition. It's automatically 30 frames, but say if you wanted it, to be shorter or longer, you can actually change this amount. So say if we wanted a very quick, maybe transitions, we want 6 frames. You can click 6, click OK, and then when you go into effects and say maybe, you search for cross dissolve, you can click and drag this onto your cut. I forgot. Here we'll make a cut here so we can see it. Now you'll notice that it's 6 frames long. You can click on it. It's 6 frames long, where before the default's always 30. Gonna make a few cuts so that we can see what some things being put together here. Alright, so another thing here that you can do inside Premiere Pro is you can change the default transition. So right now I have my default transition. Say if we wanted to apply it to these two clips, what you can do is select them, hit Command D, and now it'll automatically apply the default transition. Now currently I have it as a wipe. So, it'll wipe and it's 6 frames long. but you can always change the default transition inside Premiere Pro. Maybe we don't want it to be a wipe. Actually, cross dissolve is usually the default. And what you can do is actually right click on an effect inside the effects panel and click set selected as default transition. And that'll actually change it to be the default inside Premiere Pro. And you'll notice that a little blue square is around that inside the effect. Next to the effect, there's a little blue square, and you can see like even under audio effects, the default audio effect is constant power. There's a little blue check mark or a box, stroke box over that as well. So that's a way to actually apply or change the default transition and to apply effects to a lot of clips very quickly. You can just marquee select, hit Command D, and now you can see that we applied, the cross dissolve transition instead of the wipe, and we changed it, and we made it 6 frames long. So that's a way to, if you're working with a lot of photos or you need to blend, a lot of things together, that's a quick way to change those settings to optimize it to be a little quicker. All right, so the next thing is kind of an underrated feature inside Premiere Pro. Not a lot of people talk about it, but it's called show through cuts. So say if we have this clip here and we just make a bunch of cuts, right? We grab our razor tool, we make cuts. What you can do, all these cuts, just looking at it as is right here, and make this a little bigger so you guys can see. Here we go. All right, so you notice that there's these cuts here, but there's not really a cut because it's the same clip. When we play this back, it's not like a jump cut or anything, or it's not like a different clip or anything. It's the same piece of footage we just decided to make cuts on. So these are different than like other types of cuts inside Premiere Pro. And you can actually visualize these cuts as see-through cuts or through cuts, through edits. That's what they're called. I keep messing that up. They're called through edits, and you can actually change the way they're displayed inside the timeline. That way you know when there's a through edit, as opposed to just like a cut where you're actually cutting from like one clip to another clip, or A roll to B roll or something where it's a completely different video. Where in this is a through edit. It's a cut, but it's the same exact thing. There is no cut essentially. You know what I mean? So, but you can change the way this looks, what's called show through edits, and that's located under the wrench menu inside the timeline panel. So if you click on this little wrench guy, you'll notice that there's show through edits, and when you click this, you'll notice that there's a little piece of tape in between each of these cuts, and that essentially tells you, hey, these are through edits. Where these over here, that's actually a cut to a different piece of footage or a different take. A better example is this, you're going from that to that. Where over here, these are through edits. So it's the same exact clip. The frames align. They're part of the same video clip. It's the same thing. So that's an easy way if you, end up making a lot of cuts on the same clip and you end up having a lot of through edits, you can turn that feature on. That way you know which cuts are through edits and which cuts are actual real edits, I guess. But yeah, that's a way to turn that on. It's in the wrench icon, and there's a few other things in the wrench icon you can turn on and off to really customize your viewing preferences settings. So feel free to explore this menu here. It's kind of like another menu outside of the hamburger menu. There's also a lot of things in here as well. I'm going to turn that off for now. But that's how that works. All right, let's go to auto reframe. All right, so we have this sequence here. Maybe we want to, actually, let's go into a new. Can't remember. Here we go. All right, so I have this clip. Maybe I want to auto reframe it, obviously this isn't going to be perfect. It isn't the best example of this, but actually let's go back to sound panels. I think this will be a better idea here. So say we have this horizontal video, we want to make it vertical for social media maybe. What you can do is use auto reframe sequence to actually change the sequence to be vertical instead of horizontal. So to do that, what you can do is click on the timeline, go up to sequence, auto reframe sequence. And then you'll see a few different options. You can change the name of it. In this case, I'm going to leave it sound panels 9:16. That way I know it's vertical. You can actually change it. It doesn't necessarily have to be vertical 9:16. You can change it to a square, vertical 4:5, horizontal 16:9. So there's different options. You can actually just reframe a sequence. And then there's a few options under here. There's don't nest clips. This will replace your current motion adjustments. Or you can nest the clips. This will keep motion adjustments but remove transitions. I usually leave it on nest clips. That way, it just nests them. Then you click create, and then it'll automatically try to reframe the sequence. You'll notice at the very bottom right, it's analyzing for auto reframe. And it's essentially, it's trying to analyze what's in the frame and center it. That way it's in frame when it's reframed. So, we took a horizontal video, we're making it vertical, and Adobe's trying to figure out, okay, what's the subject? Put the subject in, the auto reframe, in the center, that way it's visible. So that's how auto reframe works. Now, I'm not sure how long this is going to take to do, since this is a 10-minute video here. But you can see, it's doing that one in the bottom right. It's almost done. So maybe it might do it. But yeah, that's auto reframe. It's very handy if you have a short, horizontal video, you want to convert it to social media or, a different viewing experience, you can do that. And there's also, we did it, okay, pick the chair as the subject of the clip here. So obviously it's not perfect. Oh no, it did okay. So it actually keyframed. It went from the chair to me sitting down, and it's picking me up opening the bag here. So it didn't do bad. You can see it's focusing on my hand putting down the sound panels here. So it didn't do a bad job doing this. It's trying its best to determine where I'm going here. But yeah, that's auto reframe, and you'll notice that we did it to the actual sequence. You can actually do it to clips too. There's actually an effect, I believe, called auto reframe. If you go to effects, auto reframe, under transform, there's auto reframe. So, if you want this to actually be auto reframed, you can click that, click analyze, and it'll reframe it. So you can do it for clips, or you can also do it for sequences. I recommend doing sequences, but it's available for both. All right, now let's talk about auto scene detection. This was the other sequence that I had open. Say if I have this video here that's already a rendered out video, and maybe I want to go back in and actually make edit points where the cuts are. You can actually automatically do that now with the new feature inside Premiere Pro. So check this out. If we click on the clip and we want to make cuts at the cut points, you can go to clip, wait a second, clip, scene edit detect, there it is. And then you can click on this box, apply a cut at each detected cut point. And this is very helpful. You can create a bin for subclips. You can create a clip marker for each detected cut point. You can do a lot, but this is big because you can actually make cuts. Say if you have a thing, you render it out and you want to break it apart and use certain clips from that original video, you can make those cuts automatically. So you can check that box, click Analyze. You'll notice that it will actually make cuts on this clip. So Adobe AI, once again, this is a new feature that came out last year. It'll analyze the footage and it will make cut points where it thinks it's actually making a cut. And we'll see how accurate this is. It usually is really accurate, especially like down to the frame usually. The only gray area is like if it looks very similar, the footage, it might not pick it up. But most of the time, this is a really solid thing. I've used it at work a lot. If I'm going through B-roll clips and I just have like a long, sequence, and I want to make cuts, from a already like export video, this is a good way to just break something up and into individual cuts. It's almost done. All right, and there it is. So it made cuts. It took that video and made a bunch of cuts. We can see, now this is technically the same thing, but going from like that shot to that shot, that shot to a close-up of my tutorial, back to me, back to that, it's very helpful if you are in this situation, where you have a long, maybe hour clip and you just want to make cuts to everything. This can automatically make cuts for you. So it's just something to keep in mind. In niche situations where you need to actually break it up like that, it's very helpful to do that. So that's a new feature that's pretty cool. All right, let's go into the next tip, which is tip number 19. So we're almost there, making our way to 25. So the next tip, you can actually use markers. This is kind of like a markers hack or a markers tip here. Say we have, I kind of messed up the sequence, all my markers are off. But say, we have these clips, we have these markers here, and say if they actually mean something, you can make markers by hitting M. So, you make markers. Now you can use these markers, you can actually double click on them, you can give them a name, you can give them a duration, you can add comments, you can change the color of them. But one thing that you can do is you can actually navigate the sequence using markers. So there's actually a panel called markers that you can bring up here, and you can actually click on a marker to actually go forward. You can see the name, you can see the comments. Obviously I didn't fill them in, but if you work with markers a lot, or you want a way to leave notes, give them a name, this is an easy way to really navigate your footage to go forward and backwards. Because if I'm trying to go to that marker right there, you can scroll down, read the comment, read the note, you can go to it, and now you're already at that edit point. So using the markers panel is a really underrated way to go to your markers, and you can check the different colors. So if you're obviously I only have green markers, but if you're working with you only wanted to see the orange markers, you can click on orange and you can go there. So that's tip number 19, is use markers, or the marker panel, as a hack or a way to navigate your sequence. Now, say if we didn't want these markers, maybe we messed up our sequence like we did here and we want to get rid of them, we want to start fresh. What we can do is use a new, it's a new feature called Simplify Sequence. And to do that, it's not only good for removing markers, but there's a lot of other cool things that you can explore as well. So to simplify your sequence, you can go up to Sequence, Simplify Sequence. And then what you'll notice is what it will actually do, it'll duplicate your sequence. So, this is the sound panel's sequence, but it's going to duplicate it, and you can rename it. You can, sound panels, maybe we want it to say no markers. That way we know, this new simplified sequence isn't going to have any markers. And you'll notice there's a bunch of options here, and you can play with them. You can click on empty tracks. You can click, remove sequence markers. So you can click on the green markers and it'll remove all of them. But yeah, there's a lot of different things here to simplify your sequences. Empty tracks, transitions, offline clips, disabled clips. If you're making a lot of edits and you want to simplify your sequence, there's a lot of good things in here to do that. And the best part is it duplicates your sequence. It's not, destructive where it's actually taking your sequence and just like, breaking it apart, but it actually duplicates it, makes a new one. So we'll click simplify, and you'll notice that a new sequence opens with no markers, and it has that name, sound panels, no markers on it. You'll notice in the project panel, a new sequence is there. So that's how simplify sequence works. It really comes down to how you want to, use it on your end, but that's a new feature that came out last year in 2022. Another feature that came out in 2022 is called creating captions, the captions workflow. There's a whole new way to create captions here. So we're going to go back in our podcasts, and this is very helpful for like podcasts, especially because who wants to manually transcribe a podcast episode? You can use Adobe's new captions workflow to do that. So to transcribe a sequence, what you can do is click on the clip, change your workspace actually to captions and graphics. And if you notice, they actually renamed this workspace captions and graphics. That way it's not only for essential graphics and text, but it's also for, creating captions as well. So you can click on that. And what you can do is navigate to the text panel. And go to the should be right here. Oh, I already did it. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, I forgot I did this before. Here, I'll show you how to do it. I'll re-import a new file for you guys. Go do a trailer episode, that way it's a little shorter. All right, so say if we have this trailer episode of my podcast, we can do is click on it, then click under the text panel, under transcribe, click transcribe sequence, and then you have your language, so I can choose English. Audio on track, it's mix, or you can choose audio track. Say if you have like sound effects, music, you can actually choose which audio track you want. In this case, I'm just going to do mix because that's the only thing in my sequence. You can click on recognize when different speakers are talking, which is helpful if there is a podcast. I think in this one specifically, there isn't any, so I'm going to uncheck that and then click transcribe. And it'll actually, render it out and do the thing. It depends. The longer your audio clip is, the longer it takes for Adobe Sensei to, break it down. But this is very helpful. Otherwise, you'd have to, manually sit there and type out what people are saying. And this really helps speed up your workflow. A lot of these features and new AI features, that's really what it comes down to. They're there really to help you speed up your workflow. And there you go. So in a matter of like 30 to 40 seconds there, it managed to spit out this text. Obviously it's not going to be perfect, but it does a pretty good job here. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the post-show podcast. John, the video guy here. Hope you're having a great day. And obviously if you wanted to make changes, you can double click. You can go in here, maybe, the post-show is, we can capitalize the S. We can capitalize John, the video guy. You can make your changes however you wish. It's not going to be perfect, trust me. I've used this in the past, but you can double click, make your changes. But what you can do is once you're done, you can click CC to create captions. And then you can create from sequence transcript. You can choose your a default if you want to choose a default. I usually just use subtitle default. You can change, maximum length in characters. You can choose a style. There's different styles that you can create and save. You can choose single line, double line. I usually like double line captions. Then you can click create. Then it'll just generate them all for you. You'll notice that there's essentially like a new layer inside Premiere Pro here for captions. It's at the very top here. It's above your video tracks layer. You can see our captions are there, and they're displayed in the program monitor there. And you can, hide all captions. You can turn them on by hitting this little CC button. Show all caption tracks. And you can make changes. They are built into the Essential Graphics panel. So say if we wanted to make changes, what you can do is go inside the appearance here. Maybe you can, if you wanted to change it to maybe a dark blue background, or a dark blue fill with maybe maybe a gray background. That looks terrible. I'm fired. Here, we'll go back to black text here. And we'll expand the sides here. There we go. And maybe we want to change the font because, it just defaulted to, I think, the basic. A really good font for captions is Helvetica. It's a very, I don't know if it is the standard, but it's a very visible type of font. It's very easy to read. So especially if you're looking for really good fonts to use in captions or subtitles, Helvetica, very easy to read. You can see the difference from, before and after there. But now we have this format, but say if we wanted to actually add it to all the others, what you can do is click on it, click this little up button in the top right, and that will push all the style to all the other ones. So when you click that, then all captions on track, click OK. And then you'll notice when we scroll through here, all the changes are made to, the entire sequence here. So that's a cool way to, apply changes and whatnot. So yeah, that's the new captions workflow inside Premiere Pro. And that came out late last year in 2022. I think it was like late 2021, early 2022 it came out. All right, so tip number 22. Close all gaps in sequence. This is a really cool feature I found out a few years ago. That saves time, especially if you make a lot of cuts. So say I have this sequence here, and there's all these cuts, right? There's, we go forward, we got all these random cuts. I went through and selected the best parts of the B-roll, right? And I want to put these all together. Well, you can close all these gaps, or essentially ripple delete all these clips by going up to Sequence, Close Gap. And you'll notice it pushes all of them together, which is very helpful. That way you don't have to, click and hit ripple delete or, try to move them over. You just click that one button, saves a lot of time. So that's an easy way to close all gaps inside Premiere Pro. Another helpful keyboard shortcut, tip number 23. We're almost at the end, guys. If you want to go full screen on a panel, the keyboard shortcut is tilde. You can click the tilde button. You can navigate, especially if you're working on a small screen like a laptop like I am today. Tilde, you can go full screen, little screen, full screen. If you're working on effects controls, you can go full screen there, especially if you're working with like keyframes a lot. You can make it full screen by hitting tilde. All right, so the last two tips is actually going to be Workspaces related. So we're going to talk on Workspaces. So a few things, Workspaces really got revamped in Premiere Pro recently. You know, there's the new import. You can go to the import panel, the edit, and then of course the export panel is there. So there's these three main panels, and then the Workspaces got kind of moved from the center up to this little button in the top right. And one thing that you can do inside Premiere Pro is you can actually display your workspaces here at the top again. If you click on Show Workspaces tabs, then they're all displayed here. So you can see, you know, we have all of our, you know, we can go to Essentials. We can easily navigate from editing to color to captions and graphics. And you can actually change the order of these too, I believe. If you go to edit workspaces, you can actually, you know, say if you're in the editing workspace a lot, you can move this up. Maybe you're in the color a lot, you can move this up. You can move up captions and graphics, and maybe audio. Those are the ones I use. And maybe vertical too if you work with vertical video. Which vertical, that's a really nice format if you or workspace if you're working with vertical, you know, social media videos a lot. The vertical workspace is a new feature that came out a few months ago. And then if you click OK, you'll notice that they're all right there, right at your fingertips. Yeah, vertical. What's nice about vertical, it puts the program monitor to the right. So, and like from top to bottom, that way, you know, you're editing cell phone footage, it takes up the whole top bottom and puts into that aspect ratio. And that puts the project panel top left, and it still gives you a nice wide timeline. And then it puts all your other panels in the middle here. All right, so let's talk about, that was tip number 24. Tip number 25, been saving the best for last. So I've been experimenting with a lot of different workspaces, and one I've been debating about making a YouTube video about, but I'll just do it here to just show you guys maybe one idea to kind of consolidate all these workspaces into maybe just one workspace that you can pretty much access almost anything. So we're going to do that here today and make our own workspace to close out the live stream. So, you know, you can make certain workspaces, you know, and name them and stuff. So we're going to go through that right now. But this is a new workspace that I developed that I think works pretty good. So what we're going to do here to make your own workspace, you can close out all your panels and really start only adding in what you need. So, you know, we'll start in the project panel. The one thing with the project panel that I really like, excuse me, is if you click, you know, what I like, you know, if you click the drop down, you need a lot of vertical room for the project panel. So this really depends on your own screen space, but I recommend taking the project panel and just kind of going to the far left where it turns green. And if you let go, that way you can really navigate everything. I know a lot of people use the tile workspace, they're the icon view. And if you do, this might not apply to you. I like the list view where I can see the names of everything. But yeah, I like having the project panel like that. That way I can, you know, it's there. I can easily navigate, click drop down, get to all my sequence. Where if it's in a little box, it's a little more difficult to get to everything when everything's open. You're trying to, you know, navigate. So that's one thing there. Now let's essentially consolidate everything. What we're going to do is actually close all of these. So we're going to click close. Close this, close the info, close effects. We'll put it back up here. Close this and close history. And then this expands the timeline. So we have a nice wide timeline here. We'll just expand this a little bit. We'll leave the tools menu like that. That's fine. And like I said, guys, this is kind of like my workflow that I've been kind of experimenting with at work, trying to, you know, ramp up my speed and video editing. But yeah, essentially wide timeline here. We got audio to the bottom left, tools right here, project panel to the far left. And ideally, if you have a second screen that's vertical, you could just mount the project panel to that screen. And if you do have a second screen, what you can do is you can click on the hamburger menu and go to undock panel. And that'll actually undock it. And you can actually move this. For example, I'm putting it on my OBS screen now, but now it's over there and I can bring it back. You can actually have this as its own screen, which is really nice about Premiere Pro. It's highly customizable. But we'll just put that back over there for now. We'll pretend it's like its own thing. Put it over there. We'll squish this. All right, so we've got a nice wide timeline. We got our project panel, program monitor in the top. And essentially we'll have everything in this top middle. And what you'll notice is in Premiere Pro, by default, it's tabs. But if you've worked with After Effects recently, you'll notice that sometimes you can have like little buttons that kind of auto-populate like stacks. You can actually change that by clicking on the hamburger menu and go to panel group settings and go to stack panel group. And this will put everything in stacks. And I have to say, I've been enjoying this. So, you can click on source, you can click on effects, and basically I just put everything in this middle section, and it's worked for me so far. So, we can go to effects, but we can just click and drag this to the middle. We can go to pretty much anything that you want. You can go to, lumetri color. We'll just put this into the middle here. Go to essential graphics, put it in the middle. Now, like I said, it really depends on your workspace. At work, in my current setup at work, I'm on a larger TV. So now looking at this on a laptop screen, it might not work as well. But this is a different option, a new way of working. And you can actually recategorize this. So you can do like source up here and click on it, click on effects controls. You got audio clip mixer. I don't really need audio clip mixer. Don't really need metadata. But yeah, audio track layer, lumetri color, essential graphics. And they're all in tabs, and you can easily just click from one to another very quickly. So this is a workflow that I've been experimenting with. I'm not 100% sold on it, but it's a different way that you can edit that I found helpful. But yeah, so now to save this, how you save a workspace, if you go up to Workspaces, what you can do is click on the button and then click on Save as New Workspace. And then you can name it. So maybe I name it, John the Video Guy or something, so I know what it is. And then you can click OK. And then you'll notice at the top right, it will be displayed. You can change this order. By default, it's at the end, but you can click on Edit Workspaces, scroll down. And if this is the workspace you really want to use a lot, you can just drag this up to the top. And then click OK. And then you'll notice it's the first workspace displayed here next to our other workspaces. But yeah, that's the workspace I've been using a lot. All right. And that was tip number 25. So we are done, guys. We made it through. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream today, learned some of the new features inside Premiere Pro. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite new feature is inside Premiere Pro 2023, 2022. Like I said, a lot came out in the last few years, and hopefully this was a nice guide to kind of see and experiment with the new features. So, till next time, take care and happy video editing.